The first thing you notice on the eternal snow peak is the sound. Not the wind itself. The wind is always there, a constant presence like an old companion, but the silence wrapped inside it. A silence so deep it feels as though even your heartbeat has to tiptoe. People say time has no meaning here. Snow falls, melts, and falls again, yet the mountain remains unchanged, as if trapped in a moment the world forgot how to move beyond. No matter how far you walk, the sky stays the same color, a pale silver that could be dawn or dusk, or something in between. Somewhere within that endless white lives a girl. No one knows her age. No one knows her name. And no one knows whether she's still human. They call her the snowbound witch, the immortal daughter of winter, the maiden of frozen hearts. Names born from fear, or awe, or perhaps both. Those who swear they once glimpsed her say she moves like the shadow of a snowflake, quiet and unassuming, as if apologizing to the world for existing. And yet, wrapped around her is a curse heavy enough to shift the balance of seasons. Anyone she loves will die on the first night of winter. It's a cruel kind of fate, the sort that doesn't scream or bleed, but quietly eats away at the soul. A fate that teaches you to keep your distance, to bury every warmth before it can bloom. So she remains alone at the peak, where no footprints last and no memories dare take root. But one day, something changes. A man from the south climbs the mountain. He carries the scent of sunlight, the stubbornness of someone who refuses to let legends dictate reality, and the kind of warmth that does not ask permission to be felt. He doesn't come seeking miracles or power. He simply comes because he believes the world, at times, needs saving, and that someone must take the first step. In his steps, the snow melts just a little. In her silence, a crack forms, thin as a strand of hair. No one knows what will happen when the warmth of a wandering heart meets the cold of an eternal curse. But if there is one thing mountains and people share, it is this. Even the hardest frost can remember how to thaw. And on that mountain, under a sky that cannot decide its hour, the first winter of their story quietly begins. Chapter 1. The Man Who Climbed Toward the Silence. The storm arrived without warning, not the kind that shouts its rage, but the quiet, determined type that seems to slip under your skin before you notice it. Rheon had been climbing for hours, and the world had gradually turned into nothing but white. White sky, white ground, white breath spilling from his lips like fragile ghosts. He paused, planting the tip of his sword into the hard snow, using it as an anchor. The wind surged around him, tugging at his cloak, whispering things that didn't belong to any language he knew. Sometimes, if he listened too long, the whispers almost sounded like memories. His memories, or someone else's, he couldn't tell. I should have reached the ridge by now, he thought, though, now, felt meaningless here. Time scattered around him like loose grains slipping between numb fingers. He continued walking because stopping felt more dangerous. The mountain had a way of turning stillness into surrender. After a while, it could have been minutes or a lifetime, he saw something dark against the white. At first he thought it was a boulder, or a trick of exhaustion. But as he approached, the shape resolved into the faint outline of a doorway carved into the stone. Snow had begun to swallow it, but a dim light pulsed weakly from within, like the last heartbeat of a dying ember. Rheon hesitated. A rational man would have walked away. But rationality was not what had brought him up this cursed mountain. He pushed the stone door open. It groaned softly, as if the mountain were exhaling for the first time in centuries. Inside, the air was strangely warm. Not summer warm, more like the warmth of an old memory, familiar and uncertain. Rheon let his eyes adjust. The room was small, half cave and half sanctuary. Crystals of ice clung to the walls, reflecting light in quiet, trembling motions. And at the center, sitting with her knees drawn to her chest, was a girl. Her hair spilled to the floor like a streak of winter moonlight. Her skin glowed faintly, as if she were crafted from the very snow he'd been fighting. She didn't look up when he entered, but he felt her presence press against him, soft yet absolute, like the hush of snowfall. For a moment, Rheon wasn't sure she was real. He cleared his throat. You shouldn't be here. Her voice sliced through the air, sharp and cold, but without cruelty. It sounded like someone stating a fact that had already hurt them countless times. Rheon took a slow step forward. I'm looking for someone, a woman who lives on this mountain. Then you should leave before the storm eats you whole. She lifted her head, and her eyes, pale, ancient, exhausted, met his. He felt something inside him jolt, like a spark hitting frozen wood. I've come a long way, he said, trying to steady his breath. I need your help. At that, her expression shifted, not surprise, not curiosity, but something closer to resignation. As if she'd heard this before. As if she already knew how the story ended. The world below is freezing, Rheon continued. Villages are disappearing under sudden winter. People say a curse is awakening, something old and violent. They told me the Snow Witch might understand what's happening. The girl's lashes trembled. I am not a witch. Her voice was soft now, almost a whisper. But the curse, yes. I know it. Rheon knelt beside her, brushing frost from his gloves. Then help me stop it. She drew a slow breath. The air around her shimmered faintly, as if reacting to her pulse. I cannot help you. Not coldly, sorrowfully. I am the curse. The storm howled outside, as if confirming her words. Rheon stared at her, heart pounding, the warmth of shock battling the cold in his chest. He didn't know what answer he had expected, but it wasn't this fragile confession spoken like an apology to the world. Her gaze drifted to the floor. If you stay any longer, she said, the mountain will take you. Or worse. I will. Snow drifted across the cave entrance like slow-moving ghosts. Rheon exhaled. In his homeland, people said fate could be changed if you had enough courage or enough stubbornness. He wasn't sure which he had more of, but either way, he wasn't going to turn back. He stood and offered her his hand. Then let me decide what's dangerous. For the briefest second, her eyes widened, not in fear, but in something far older and more fragile. A crack in eternal ice. She didn't take his hand. But she didn't look away, either. Outside, the wind screamed. Inside, something quieter began to stir, a shift too small to name, but unmistakably there. And just like that, Rheon thought, the silence I climbed toward finally answered back. Chapter 2. The Weight of Frozen Shadows. Night descended on the mountain the way a blade descends on flesh, swift, merciless, and inevitable. Rheon felt it the moment he stepped outside the sanctuary. The wind had changed. It carried a weight now, a presence pressing against the skin as though the air itself had teeth. Behind him, the girl lingered at the threshold of the cave. The dim light from within clung to her like a fading halo, but even that radiance seemed fragile, as if the darkness could swallow it at any moment. You should not leave, she said quietly. Her words trembled through the storm like the final echo of a dying bell. Rheon turned to her. If I stay hidden in a cave, I'll freeze before morning. No, she murmured, eyes lowering. The cold will not be your death. A pause, long, aching. It is what walks within it. The wind surged, carrying with it a distant, inhuman wail. Rheon instinctively gripped the hilt of his sword. What was that? The girl closed her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was a whisper carved from fear she had long grown used to carrying. It knows you are here. Storm clouds strangled what little light remained. The world narrowed into shades of black and steel gray. Rheon felt as though the sky itself was lowering, pressing down on him until his breath grew thin. He forced himself to step forward. Then I should stay alert. No. Her voice cracked like ice under pressure. Alertness won't save you. The things on this mountain do not hunt in ways you understand. Rheon studied her face, ethereal, calm on the surface, but beneath it lay exhaustion older than any winter he'd survived. She did not speak like someone warning a stranger. She spoke like someone delivering a eulogy. To them, she continued, your fear is a lantern. Your hope is a wound. Your heartbeat is a path painted in fire. Rheon exhaled a slow, steady stream of vapor. Good. Then it won't take long for us to find each other. For the first time, something flickered in her eyes, not admiration, not shock, but a fragile, impossible flicker of disbelief. As if she had never seen a man willingly step into the maw of the unknown. She hesitated, then stepped closer. The snow around her feet hardened into tiny shards of crystal. Her presence changed the air, not warmer, but sharper, like a blade honed to perfection. Do not mistake courage for invincibility, she said. Human spirits fracture easily on this peak. Rheon lifted his head to meet her gaze. So do mountains. For a heartbeat, the world paused. Between them lay the faintest thread, as thin as a single hair of frost, as delicate as the breath between one moment and the next. Something unspoken passed through it. But then the mountain answered. A distant crack thundered across the sky, not thunder, not ice-breaking, but something older. Something alive. The girl's eyes widened. For the first time, true fear touched her face. It's coming. A shadow appeared far off in the storm, vague, shifting, taller than any man, moving with the unnatural fluidity of smoke twisting underwater. Rheon felt the hair rise along his arms. The air trembled with unseen hunger. He drew his sword. Stay behind me. She didn't move. Her voice was barely audible. It does not matter where I stand. It has always been coming for me. The wind roared, the shadow surged, and the mountain held its breath. As the creature's shape solidified, a mass of frost and hatred, a hollow face screaming through the blizzard, Rheon felt a truth settle like a weight in his chest. This mountain was not merely cursed. It was alive, it was watching, and it had no intention of letting either of them leave unchanged. The girl whispered one final warning, her voice breaking under the gravity of centuries, "Do not let it touch your heart." And then the storm swallowed them both. Chapter 3. The Thing That Wears the Winter. The storm split open. A sound, if it could be called that, tore through the air. Not a roar, not a scream. Something between the two, twisted into a shape that the human mind was never meant to touch. Rheon felt his vision blur for a heartbeat. The snow itself recoiled. The creature stepped through the blizzard like a wound tearing open across the world. It had no true form. Its body rose and fell like a torn banner of frost, and its face, if there was a face, was a hollow mask of ice cracked into a permanent, silent shriek. Inside its chest glowed a cluster of pale blue veins pulsing like a dying heart. Rheon tightened his grip on the sword. The girl behind him, Aelira, didn't breathe. Or perhaps she didn't dare to. The creature moved, not fast, not slow, but with the inevitability of a glacier grinding down a mountain, uncaring, unstoppable. A voice seeped out of it like cold vapor, "She is ours." The sound wasn't heard so much as felt, a vibration along the spine, a pressure behind the ribs. Rheon gritted his teeth as the cold stabbed through his armor like needles. He stepped forward anyway. "You'll have to take her through me." The creature's mask twisted, forming something like a smile yet nothing like it at all. Human fire, burns so quickly. It lunged. Rheon leapt aside just in time. The creature's arm, or something resembling an arm, carved through the air, slicing a nearby boulder cleanly in two. The cut edges steamed, not from heat, but from an absence of warmth so complete the stone seemed to cry as it froze. Rheon struck back, blade flashing. Metal met ice. The sound rang like a funeral bell. The creature shuddered, then retaliated with a sweep that sent Rheon sliding across the snow. His shoulder smashed against a jagged outcrop. A burst of pain shot down his arm. He forced himself up. The creature paused, tilting its head. "Why bleed for her?" "Because she's not yours," Rheon spat. The creature's chest pulsed once, twice, like the flicker of a predator's eye. "She was marked before your people learned to speak." Aelira finally stepped forward. Her voice trembled, but each word cut deeper than any blade. "Leave him out of this." Snow lifted around her feet, caught in a strange upward wind. Her hair drifted like strands of silver flame. The air sharpened, forming thin fractures in the space around her, as if the world itself recoiled from her awakening power. For the first time, the frost wraith froze. "You would break the silence, Aelira?" Rheon stared. The creature knew her, truly knew her. Not as a stranger, but as something bound to it. Aelira raised a hand, and the storm bent around her fingers. Snowflakes hung suspended in midair, perfectly still, like 1,000 tiny eyes waiting for her command. Her expression was sorrow, not fear, not anger, but sorrow so vast it felt like an ocean made of frozen mirrors. "I don't want to fight you," she said. "I never wanted any of this." The wraith's mask cracked with a sound like bone splitting. "You were born for this." The blizzard convulsed. Sharp pillars of ice erupted from the ground like fangs. One burst toward Rheon, faster than thought. Aelira lifted her arm. A shield of crystal formed around Rheon, shattering the moment the pillar hit it. But it broke the attack. Rheon blinked, stunned. "You." She didn't look at him. "Run. I'm not leaving you." Her eyes fluttered with something like despair. "You don't understand. The closer you are to me, the easier it is for him to." "You think he can have you?" Rheon snapped. "Over my dead." The wraith interrupted with a whisper colder than death. "That can be arranged." It lunged. Rheon swung his sword, but the wraith's form split into 3 ghost-like slashes that converged from different angles. Aelira stepped between them. A blast of white erupted outward, a burst of snowlight so bright it carved shadows into the night. The wraith reeled back, howling as frost cracked along its limbs. Rheon gaped. Aelira was breathing hard, her knees trembling. Her power rippled across the air, visible and raw, but something else stirred beneath it. A pulse. A second heartbeat. Her curse, waking. The wraith's voice became a low, hungry whisper. "Your heart trembles. Do you feel it? The warmth that kills? Let it bloom, girl. Let it kill him." Aelira staggered backward, clutching her chest as if stabbed from within. Rheon grabbed her shoulders. "Aelira, look at me." She did. Her eyes glimmered, not with fear, but a pain so deep it threatened to tear her apart. "Stay away," she gasped. "If I feel too much." Rheon tightened his grip. I don't care. Snow howled around them. The wraith rose taller, like a shadow stretching to swallow the world. Its voice boomed, then died together. The storm descended like a beast. Rheon raised his sword. Aelira raised her trembling hands. And the first true battle of winter began. Chapter 4, Blood on the Snow That Does Not Melt. The world contracted into a single instant. A crash of ice. A blinding whiteness. A sound like a great throat exhaling rage. Rheon was thrown backward, tumbling across the snow. His sword spun out of reach, vanishing somewhere into the blizzard. The impact crushed the air from his lungs. For a moment, he could only lie there, listening to the roar of the storm, a roar that felt almost alive. He forced his eyes open. Aelira stood alone before the frost wraith. Her silhouette wavered like a flame resisting extinction. Snow swirled violently around her, not falling but rising, as if gravity itself bent to her will. And yet, her shoulders shook. She was losing ground. The wraith loomed above her, its form shifting like a tapestry of broken winter memories, frozen screams, shattered faces, whispers trapped in ice. Its hollow core pulsed with a light that devoured warmth. Rheon staggered to his feet, but his legs buckled. He tasted blood, sharp, bright, too warm for this place. Aelira. His voice died quickly, swallowed by the wind. Aelira looked over her shoulder, and for the first time he saw fear carve itself clearly across her features. Not fear for herself, fear for him. Stay back, she cried. My power, it's reacting to you. The wraith laughed. It wasn't a sound, it was a fracture, a crack in the world's spine. Yes, feel it, girl. Its voice tangled through the storm. The stirring in your chest. The warmth that you try to smother. That is the curse's hunger. Aelira pressed a trembling hand over her heart. Her breath shortened. Frost bloomed across her skin like veins of white fire. Rheon's chest tightened. What are you talking about? He growled. The wraith turned toward him. Its face, if it had one, uncoiled into a jagged, hollow grin. She was born to kill what she loves. Rheon froze. Aelira's eyes slammed shut, as if the words themselves struck her. A crack of ice formed under her feet, a reflection of the fracture inside her. No, she whispered. Stop. The wraith advanced. It was I who laid the seed in her heart. I who marked her. I who shaped the curse that binds her soul. It raised an arm, long, sharp, more shadow than limb. And now that she feels something again. Its voice deepened into a guttural, joyous hiss. I can feed. Aelira screamed, a sound torn from her very core. Snow burst outward from her body in a violent ring. Rheon shielded his face as shards of ice cut into his arms. The mountain itself shook. Rheon lunged forward, but an unseen force slammed him down, a pressure like a giant hand pressing into his spine. He struggled to rise, his muscles locking under the unnatural cold. The wraith drifted closer to Aelira. Its shadow twisted toward her chest, reaching as if to plunge into her heart. A thin, glowing thread of energy, pale blue and trembling, began to stretch from Aelira's body toward the wraith, like a soul being pulled apart. Aelira dropped to her knees. Her breath came in broken gasps. Her eyes were emptying. Don't, she choked. Don't let me. Rheon moved. He didn't think, didn't plan. He shoved against the invisible weight with pure will, muscles screaming, veins burning. Every step felt like wading through a frozen ocean determined to turn him into a statue. But he moved. One step. Another. Another. The wraith hissed. Human. Stay down. Rheon roared back, voice raw and instinctive. He reached out, snatched his fallen sword from the snow, and sprinted. The wraith's shadow lashed at him, a black tendril of ice. Rheon slashed it away. The shadow shrieked as if the steel had torn something vital. He threw himself between Aelira and the creature, raising the blade. Touch her, he snarled, and see how quickly you melt. For the first time, the wraith faltered. Its hollow eyes dimmed. Aelira stared at Rheon, her vision blurring. Her lips parted, trembling. He could see the battle inside her, the curse pulling, her will resisting, the fear that she would kill him with her mere existence. Rheon, her voice broke. Why won't you leave? He didn't look back at her. He kept his eyes locked on the monster. Because you're not a curse, he said. You're the one fighting it. The wraith recoiled. Aelira gasped, and the mountain groaned, as if something ancient had been disturbed. Snow fell upward. The storm twisted. The wraith's form rippled violently. Enough. Its voice lost composure for the first time, splintering with panic. Your heart ruins everything. A spike of black ice shot forward, too fast to see, too fast to block. Rheon grabbed Aelira and threw her aside. The spike struck him through the shoulder. Pain tore through him like fire made of ice. Aelira screamed. The wraith whispered, bleed, human. Bleed, so she may watch the first life her heart destroys. Rheon collapsed onto one knee, blood pouring hot and bright onto the snow, a red that looked almost defiant against the endless white. Aelira crawled to him, tears freezing on her cheeks. No, no, this is my fault. Rheon smiled through gritted teeth. No, this is just a cut. A breath. Another. But your life, that's something worth bleeding for. Something changed in Aelira's eyes. Another crack, but this time, not in her heart. In her fear. The snow beneath her trembled. The wraith stepped back. Girl, what are you? Aelira rose, her hair lifting in the storm, her eyes glowing with a light that was not cold but fierce, a winter sun rising after centuries of night. You cannot choose my fate for me, she whispered. And the blizzard exploded. Chapter 5. The awakening that should never have been. The world didn't explode. It fractured. A single note, thin as the whisper of a dying bird, echoed across the mountain. Then the storm bent backward, as though the wind itself forgot which direction it had been born from. Rheon felt the pressure vanish from his shoulders. For a precious moment, he could breathe again. Aelira stood at the center of the storm, and the snow around her rose in spirals, forming a vast, shifting chrysalis of white light. But this was not gentle. Not pure. It was the kind of light that blinded. The kind of beauty that could kill. Her hair lifted like strands of molten silver. Frost formed delicate sigils along her arms, dancing with a rhythm that didn't belong to mortal flesh. Her eyes, normally distant, sorrowful, were now twin shards of ancient winter. Rheon felt dread curl around his heart. Not because she was monstrous, but because she was magnificent. Aelira turned her gaze to the frost wraith. The mountain flinched. You fed on my fear, she said. Her voice layered, hers, and something beneath it older than language. Let me show you what remains once fear is burned away. The wraith recoiled. Its shifting body stuttered, the cracks along its mask widening. You dare to wake it? Panic warped its tone. The forbidden heart of winter. Aelira lifted her hand. The blizzard froze mid-air. Every snowflake became a knife of crystal, suspended between one heartbeat and the next. Rheon stared, breath caught. This wasn't magic. This was authority, cold, merciless authority. Aelira closed her fingers. The suspended snowflakes collapsed into a razor storm. The wraith screamed as thousands of crystal blades tore through its form, shredding the frost soul that held it together. The mountain shook violently. The blizzard twisted like a wounded beast. Rheon shielded his face, but a few shards sliced across his cheek, thin lines of fire. The wraith thrashed, its voice cracking into a dozen dissonant tones. You are not free. You are the vessel. Your heart is bound to me. Aelira stepped toward it. Each step carved a glowing print into the snow. No, she whispered, but for the first time. I choose to fight. A spasm ran through her, and for a second her expression twisted in pain, raw, agonizing. Rheon saw it. She was pushing herself past the boundaries of her body, fighting something within. The curse. And it was fighting back. Aelira pressed her hand to her chest, gasping. Frost spread down her arms, burning patterns of white fire along her veins. Her breath came out in shallow, fractured bursts. Rheon stumbled forward. Aelira, stop, you'll tear yourself apart. She didn't turn around. I can't stop, she said, voice cracking. If I do, it devours you next. The wraith surged, desperate, sensing her weakness. It lunged like a collapsing avalanche, jagged limbs of shadow and ice reaching to impale her. Aelira did not move. Her eyes flickered downward. A single tear slid down her cheek, then froze before it could fall. She whispered something so soft Rheon barely heard it, not again. And then she lifted both hands. A ring of ice erupted around her, a perfect circle carved from the mountain's spine. The ground caved inward, drawing the wraith into a vortex of collapsing frost and shattered winter. The creature screamed, high, violent, frantic, as the circle tightened. Shards of its essence tore free in streams of pale blue light, pulled toward Aelira like rivers being forced upstream. Rheon felt sickness seize him. She wasn't just destroying it. She was absorbing it. The wraith shrieked. You will become what I am. Aelira trembled violently. She clutched her chest, biting back a scream. Her knees buckled, but she forced herself up again. Rheon rushed to her, ignoring the storm tearing at his skin. He grabbed her shoulders. Aelira, stop, this isn't strength, this is. She looked at him. Her eyes were no longer blue. They were clear, silver white, like a mirror polished by centuries of solitude. Softly, she whispered. Rheon, if I stop, you die. The vortex swallowed the wraith's body. Its final scream cracked the sky. Then silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that follows execution. Aelira collapsed. Rheon caught her before she hit the snow. Her body was ice cold, colder than the mountain, colder than the storm. He felt her pulse flicker once, twice, like a candle refusing to die. Aelira, he cried. Stay with me. She opened her eyes slowly. A faint smile, fragile as a cracked snowflake. I'm not free, she whispered. It's inside me now, the curse, the hunger. Her fingers curled into his cloak. But I'm still myself. For now. Her breath ghosted across his neck, thin as dying wind. Don't let go. Rheon tightened his hold, heart pounding with a fear he'd never known. I won't, he vowed. No matter what happens. Above them, the storm began to change. Not ceasing, no, never that. But shifting, bending around Aelira like a living creature recognizing its master. Far in the distance, the mountain groaned. Something ancient had been awakened. Something that would not rest again. Chapter 6. The heart that begins to freeze. The storm died slowly, not like a beast slain, but like something remembering it had been alive too long. Rheon carried Aelira through the deepening silence, her body weightless in his arms. Too light, as if part of her had been carved away by the battle. Snow crunched under his boots in a rhythm that felt wrong. The mountain no longer roared. It listened. Aelira's breath brushed softly against his collarbone, each inhale shallow, each exhale trembling. He knew this wasn't merely exhaustion. Something inside her was shifting, twisting, settling into a shape she never asked for. He reached the cave where they first met and laid her gently onto a bed of furs. Light from the ice crystals flickered on the walls, casting ripples of pale blue shadows across her skin. Her eyelids fluttered open. Rheon? Her voice sounded far away, like someone calling across a frozen lake. He knelt beside her. I'm here. Aelira raised a hand. Frost spread across her palm in tiny branching patterns, delicate, beautiful, parasitic. She stared at them with a hollowed expression. It didn't die, she whispered. The wraith. It didn't die. It simply moved. Rheon took her hand, ignoring the sting of cold biting into his skin. You fought it. You won. That proves. No, she interrupted, shaking her head. No, I didn't defeat it. I consumed it. That's different. Her eyes dulled, as if a layer of winter frost had settled behind her pupils. Rheon's breath hitched. What does that mean? Aelira closed her eyes. A memory rippled through her, shadows pressing against her heart, whispers curling like smoke, cold fingers searching her soul for a way in. It means, she said quietly, that it lives where I live. Rheon moved closer, gripping her shoulders gently. I won't let it take you. A faint smile touched her lips, not of comfort, but of sorrow. You can't fight what isn't there. As she spoke, a faint pulse of blue light throbbed beneath her skin, right over her heart. Rheon felt it, an unnatural rhythm, slow and heavy, as though a second heartbeat had begun echoing inside her chest. He recoiled slightly, unable to mask the shock. Aelira saw it. Her gaze dimmed. Is it frightening? Rheon swallowed. No, it was a lie, not because she frightened him, but because the thing moving inside her did. Aelira rolled onto her side, curling inward as a wave of pain racked her body. Her fingers dug into the furs, leaving frost-burned scars. A choked cry escaped her lips. Rheon reached for her. Aelira. She clutched her ribcage. Inside, something pulsed, violent, desperate, trying to break free. The room darkened for a moment as ice crawled along the cave walls, cracking them with thin, spider-like fractures. Rheon pulled her into his arms, holding her through the convulsion. She trembled against him, whispering with a shattered voice, "It wants to reshape me. Bit by bit. Until I'm no longer human, or elf. Just winter." Rheon gritted his teeth. "I won't let it happen." Aelira looked up at him. Her eyes glowed faintly, a silver that was not hers. The wraith's echo. Even if I become a monster? Rheon met her gaze, unwavering. Especially then. Her breath hitched, and for a moment, warmth flickered in her expression, fragile as a snowflake landing on fire. But then, the mountain groaned. A low, resonant vibration shook the stone under their feet. Aelira gasped. "It senses me." Ice burst from her back, jagged spikes slicing through the ground before retracting. She convulsed, clutching Rheon's cloak. "It's calling," she whispered. "Calling me back to where the curse was born." Rheon stiffened. "Where?" she answered, voice thin as broken glass. "Deeper. Beneath the mountain. In the heart that never thaws." The cave trembled again, harder this time. Snow sifted from the ceiling like falling ash. Something ancient had awoken beneath them. Rheon stood, grabbing his sword. Aelira reached for him, her fingers trembling violently. Don't, she pleaded. Going there means facing the origin of everything, the curse, the cold, the thing I was meant to become. Rheon looked down at her. If that's where your fate leads, he said, then that's where I go too. Her breath caught, not because of fear, because for the first time in centuries, someone had chosen her, not the legend, not the monster, not the curse. Her. The trembling slowed. Her second heartbeat pulsed once, faintly, almost peacefully. Rheon, she whispered, but he had already turned toward the darkness at the back of the cave, the crack that had not been there before. The one that led down into the belly of the mountain. The place where winter was born. He held out his hand. Come with me. Aelira stood, unsteady but resolute. Frost swirled around her ankles like a living aura. She took his hand, and together they walked toward the crack, toward the source of the curse, toward the truth buried in ice, toward the place where the mountain waited with its frozen, ancient hunger. Chapter 7. The mountain that remembers every cry. The crack in the cave wall swallowed them. Not like a doorway, more like a throat. As Rheon and Aelira stepped inside, the world behind them dimmed until even the memory of wind faded. What replaced it was a silence so absolute it felt carved, ancient, older than any winter the world had ever known. The tunnel slanted downward, spiraling like the ribcage of some colossal creature long dead. Jagged veins of frozen light pulsed along the walls, as though the mountain itself had arteries. Aelira clung lightly to Rheon's arm. Her steps were fragile, unsteady, each one leaving behind a faint print of shimmering frost. Do you feel it? She whispered. Rheon nodded. He didn't want to speak. Words felt like intruders here. Something watched them, not from ahead, not from behind, from everywhere the dark touched. The deeper they walked, the colder the air grew, not the cold of wind or storm, but the cold of something that never lived enough to die. A dead cold, a cold that waited. The tunnel widened suddenly into a cavern. Rheon inhaled sharply. The space was enormous, like the inside of a frozen cathedral. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like stone fangs. At the center lay a lake of black ice, its surface smooth and reflective. No ripples, no cracks, a perfect mirror, except the reflections were wrong. Rheon stepped forward. What is this? Aelira's voice trembled. This is the heart mirror. A place where winter stores the pieces it steals. Rheon frowned. Pieces? Souls. Memories. Fear. Whatever feeds the curse. Her voice broke. And whatever fed him. The air thickened, pressing against their lungs. The ice lake pulsed faintly, one slow, resonant thump. Like a heart too large for any body. Rheon gripped his sword. Stand behind me. But Aelira shook her head. No, it won't attack you. Not yet. The mountain wants something else first. What? She stared into the black ice, and the reflection staring back wasn't hers. It was a girl much younger, 8, maybe 9, terrified, crying into the snow. Rheon stepped closer, eyes widening. Aelira, is that my beginning? She whispered. The reflection shifted. The little girl reached out toward the surface, palm pressed against the ice. A second shape appeared behind her, a tall, featureless shadow, leaning close, mouthless face brushing her ear. It whispered something only the child could hear. Aelira flinched as though she felt it now. I told you, she said breathlessly. This is where the curse was planted. Rheon's jaw tightened. He grabbed her hand. You're not that child anymore. But the reflection changed again. The child Aelira collapsed. Her small body spasmed as frost spread across her chest in branching veins. She screamed, raw, primal, until her voice cracked to nothing. The shadow melted over her like a stain. Rheon looked away, anger burning through him. This isn't a memory. It's torture. Aelira stepped closer to the ice. It is reality, she said quietly. The kind I can't outrun. The reflection morphed again. Now Rheon saw himself, kneeling in the snow, sword broken, frost creeping up his arms as his breath slowed. He jerked back. What is it doing? Aelira's expression shattered. It's showing you what you will become, if I fail. Rheon's throat tightened. He forced himself to look into the reflection. The image of himself was horrifying, eyeless, hollow, a man emptied out and filled with winter. A puppet of the curse. No, Rheon snarled. That is not my fate. The ice pulsed again. A voice, smooth, ancient, layered, echoed from beneath the lake. Fate is not asked. It is given. Aelira gasped, stumbling back. That voice. She trembled violently. It's the one I heard as a child. The one that marked me. The lake cracked. Just a hairline split, thin as a strand of hair. But Rheon felt the tremor ripple through the mountain like a warning. Something beneath the ice, something colossal, shifted. The voice returned. Little heart of winter, you come home at last. Aelira fell to her knees, clutching her chest. Frost surged from her body in jagged bursts. Rheon rushed to her. Aelira, she choked out a single phrase. It's calling the curse, and the curse is answering. Under the ice, a shape began to rise. Tall, distorted, bound in chains of frozen fear. Aelira's eyes widened in horror. It's not the wraith, she whispered. Rheon gripped his sword. Then what is it? Her voice was barely a breath. The first one. The origin. The frozen king. The ice shattered. A hand, massive, armored in black frost, tipped with claws the length of daggers, burst upward, grabbing the edge of the lake. And the mountain stopped breathing. Chapter 8. The King Beneath the Ice. The hand that rose from beneath the lake was not the hand of a man. It was the hand of a calamity. Black ice clung to it like ancient armor, each finger ending in a claw curved like the crescent of a dying moon. Frost seethed along its surface, hissing against the open air as though the world itself rejected its presence. Rheon staggered back, dragging Aelira with him. But the mountain held them in place with its gaze. A second hand emerged, smashing onto the mirror lake's edge, and the surface shattered outward like glass under a hammer. Shards of frozen darkness flew across the cavern, carving thin, glowing wounds into the stone. Then the figure rose, massive, impossibly tall, a silhouette of pure winter, forged from centuries of silence and grief. The frozen king. His body was bound in jagged plates of black frost, each piece etched with symbols that pulsed like veins filled with dead light. His face was hidden beneath a helm of cracked ice. Only 2 pinpoints of pale, ghastly luminescence stared out, cold, patient, eternal. The cavern bowed to him. The mountain shuddered, and Aelira collapsed to her knees as though the weight of 1,000 winters pressed her down. The king did not speak with a voice. He spoke with presence, a force that seeped into bone, unraveling the warmth of life. You have returned. The words vibrated in Rheon's ribs, rattling his breath. Aelira shook, clutching her heart. No, I never returned. I was taken. The king's gaze sharpened. Taken? No. His voice reverberated like tectonic plates grinding. You were chosen. Aelira's breath hitched. Rheon stepped between them, raising his sword though he knew it was meaningless. Chosen for what? Rheon snarled. To suffer? The king turned his head toward Rheon. The cavern dimmed, shadows stretching long across the ice. Chosen to inherit winter. Aelira's fingers dug into the ground, frost radiating around her in delicate fractures. You cursed me, she whispered. You made me a vessel. The king tilted his head, almost curious. A curse? No. He stepped forward, each footfall cracking the ground into star-shaped ice bursts. A gift. Rheon tightened his grip on the sword. Does this look like a gift to you? The frozen king raised one massive arm. A rush of force erupted from him, not wind, not magic, but pressure, like a world being bent around a single point. Rheon was hurled sideways, smashing into a wall of ice. Pain shot through his ribs, but he forced himself onto his elbows. Aelira screamed. The king looked down at her, not with hatred, but with ownership. You hold within you the heart of the first winter. The essence that once belonged to me. Aelira's eyes widened in horror. No, I never wanted this. And yet it wakes. The king bent down, claws brushing the air near her cheek. Frost rippled from his fingertips. What you consumed above was but a fragment of my will. The wraith existed to bind you. To awaken what sleeps. To prepare you. Rheon staggered up, blood dripping down his jaw. For what? He shouted. The massive helm lowered, those pale lights locking on him. For coronation. Silence. Deep, suffocating, absolute. Then the king continued, each word a hammer. She will become the next sovereign of winter. My successor. My vessel. My legacy. Aelira recoiled as if stabbed. No, I refuse this fate. The cavern shook. The king's aura surged outward, and the ice lake cracked further, opening into a pit of swirling frostlight beneath him. You cannot refuse what you are. Aelira screamed as pain seized her body, the second heartbeat in her chest thundering like a war drum. Her hands clawed at the ground, leaving trails of frostburn. Rheon ran to her, shielding her with his body. Get away from her, he roared. The king paused. Something shifted, an ancient curiosity or perhaps a memory long buried. You guard her. Rheon glared. I won't let you take her. A low hum vibrated through the king's chest. Impossible creature. Then the king reached out with one clawed hand. Not toward Aelira, toward Rheon. The air screamed. A force like a collapsing glacier slammed into Rheon, pinning him to the frozen ground. Ice shot upward from the floor, coiling around his arms, legs, and throat like serpents. He choked, struggling to breathe. Aelira reached for him. No, don't hurt him. The king didn't turn. He stands between you and your throne. Between you and your nature. Ice tightened around Rheon's throat. His vision darkened. Aelira's heartbeat thundered, hers and the other one. No, she whispered. No, please. The frozen king lifted his hand, preparing to crush Rheon's life the way cold crushes spring. He is a flame. A brief warmth. All warmth dies. Aelira rose. Slowly. Painfully. Defiantly. Her eyes glowed with a furious silver light. Don't touch him. The king stopped. Aelira's voice trembled, but it cut through the cavern like a blade blessed by sorrow. If you want me, she said, you will not take him. The air stilled. The king regarded her, truly regarded her, and for the first time something like recognition flickered in his pale eyes. Then prove yourself. The ice constricting Rheon shattered. He collapsed, coughing, lungs burning. The king extended a hand toward Aelira. Not to kill, to summon. Step into the heart of winter. His voice rumbled like an avalanche falling upward. And let fate decide which of you survives the night. Rheon's eyes widened in horror. Aelira, don't. She looked at him. A single tear, warm, defiant, traveled down her cheek. I must. She stepped forward, toward the hole in the lake. Toward the swirling light. Toward the throne of the frozen king. And the mountain closed in behind her like a tomb preparing to seal shut. Chapter 9. The Trial of the Heart of Winter. The world vanished beneath Aelira's feet. Not fell, not collapsed, vanished, as though the mountain inhaled the ground away. A ring of pale light engulfed her, pulling her downward through the frozen lake's core. The cavern, the frozen king, Rheon's terrified face, all dissolved into streaks of white shadow. Cold swallowed everything, not the cold of ice. The cold of an idea. A concept older than seasons. Aelira gasped as her boots struck solid ground. She staggered, clutching her trembling chest. She was standing in a vast expanse of white. Infinite, borderless. A sky without stars. A ground without shadow. It felt like the silence between two dying breaths. Aelira shivered. Where am I? A voice answered, not aloud, but inside her skull, inside yourself. She spun around. A figure stood a short distance away, tall, slender, wrapped in flowing frost silk robes. Her hair fell like silver water, her eyes pale white. Her face was Aelira's, younger, colder, hollow. Aelira stepped back. No, you're. The reflection smiled. Something was wrong with the smile, an absence of warmth so absolute it felt like looking at a corpse remembering how to imitate life. I am what you will become. The air cracked under the words. Hairline fissures spread across the sky like lightning trapped behind a frozen mirror. Aelira clenched her fists. No, I won't let him turn me. Turn you? The reflection tilted her head. He does nothing. He simply reveals the truth. Ice blossomed beneath her bare feet as she walked closer. The curse is not separate from you. It is you. Aelira's breath froze in her throat. No. The reflection lifted her hand. Aelira's chest burned, the second heartbeat pulsing violently. Pain rippled through her ribs, spreading in tendrils of cold fire. Memories surfaced. Not hers, but the curses. Children crying in blizzards. Towns entombed in eternal frost. A woman screaming as the ice reached her heart. A warrior kneeling as winter devoured his last breath. Aelira fell to one knee, gasping. The reflection's voice softened, almost comforting. Why do you resist what you were shaped to be? Aelira forced her head up, sweat freezing on her skin. Because I don't want to become a monster. The reflection crouched, meeting her gaze. Monster? She brushed a lock of Aelira's hair aside. Monsters don't cry. Aelira slapped the hand away. That is why I won't become one. The reflection's expression fractured, cracks spidered across her face. You cannot defy winter. Aelira rose slowly. I can defy you. The reflection's eyes narrowed. Then your trial begins. The white expanse shattered. Aelira was thrown into darkness, a darkness thick enough to drown in, alive enough to breathe down her neck. Shapes formed around her. Figures. Ghosts. They emerged one by one, like memories dug out of a grave. A young man, his face pale, lips blue, eyes staring at her with betrayal. Aelira, why did you let me die? She staggered back. No, you're not real. Another figure stepped forward, a village elder, his arms blackened by frostbite. You brought our winter. He raised a shaking finger. You cursed us. Then more. Dozens. Hundreds. All faces she once knew. All twisted into accusations. Aelira clutched her head, screaming as they closed in. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want any of it. Their voices merged into a single freezing chant, Monster. 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 The darkness tightened, until a burst of warmth cut through it. Rheon's voice. Aelira. Aelira's eyes snapped open. He wasn't there. He couldn't be. But she felt him, the echo of him, the warmth he always carried like an unspoken promise. Her fear thinned. The ghosts shattered like brittle frost. The reflection screamed, a sound that cracked the ground. You cannot cling to him. He is warmth. You will kill him. Aelira breathed deeply, hand pressed to her trembling heart. Then I will shape my own fate. The reflection lunged. Ice blades erupted from her palms. Aelira raised her arm, frost spiraling upward. Her power surged, not as a curse, not as a gift, but as a choice. The two collided. Light exploded. A sound like 1,000 winters breaking roared through the void. When the storm cleared, the reflection fell to her knees, cracked, fading, unraveling. Aelira stood over her. The reflection reached up one trembling hand. Without me, you cannot survive. Aelira whispered. I'd rather die myself than live as your shadow. She placed her hand against the reflection's forehead. Her own power bloomed, blinding, cold, and yet somehow, beautiful. The reflection dissolved into silver dust. The sky shattered again, and Aelira fell through a tunnel of swirling frost light. As she plunged, she heard the frozen king's distant voice, the first trial ends. The next, will demand far more than your heart. Aelira's body struck stone. She gasped, vision blurring. She was back in the cavern. Rheon ran to her, grabbing her shoulders. Aelira, what happened? What did you see? She pressed her forehead against his chest, shaking violently. I saw myself, she whispered. And I finally understand what I'm fighting. Rheon tightened his arms around her. I'm here. Whatever comes next, you won't face it alone. Aelira closed her eyes, and in the shadows across the cavern, unseen, the frozen king smiled behind his helm. Chapter 10. The Prophecy of the Frozen Throne. The cavern groaned as if awakening from centuries of slumber. Rheon tightened his grip around Aelira, feeling her tremble, not from cold, but from something deeper. A cold lodged beneath her ribs. A cold that had a heartbeat. Across the shattered floor, the frozen king stood unmoving. A monument of winter. A god carved from the death of seasons. His voice rose, low and resonant, vibrating along the mountain's ancient spine. The first trial is survived. But winter does not yield so easily. Aelira lifted her gaze. Her eyes were tired. Her hands shook. But there was a fire, quiet, determined, fighting against the frost inside her. Rheon stood in front of her, sword drawn despite the futility. The king regarded him. You cling to what cannot be kept. A pause, cold, merciless. Warmth. Rheon spat blood on the ice. I'll cling to her until my last breath. The cavern's light dimmed. The frozen king stepped forward. Every movement sent waves of frost cracking through the stone. Then breathe deeply, human. For your death will be slow. Rheon braced himself. But the king walked past him. Toward Aelira. He extended one gargantuan arm. Between his claws lay a shard of glacial crystal, black as a starless sky, pulsing with faint blue veins. Aelira stiffened. What is that? The cavern seemed to recoil. The king answered. A memory. A crown. A prophecy. The shard began to float, circling Aelira like a predatory star. Rheon pulled her behind him, but the shard slipped through him like smoke. Do not touch her, he roared. The king did not turn. The right is not yours. He lifted his hand, and the shard of black frost dissolved into glittering fragments. They streamed toward Aelira, encircling her head like a crown of dying constellations. Aelira staggered. Images stabbed into her mind. A throne of frozen ribs. A crown forged of screams. A world suffocating under endless snow. She saw herself sitting upon that throne. A queen. A tyrant. A god of annihilation. She gasped, clutching her skull. Stop. Stop. The images intensified. Entire kingdoms buried beneath frost. The sky turned white. The sun fading. Children crying as winter claimed their breath. Rheon grabbed her, shaking her shoulders. Aelira, look at me, focus on me. But she couldn't hear him. She was drowning in prophecy. The frozen king watched silently. This is your fate. The future written the moment your first tear froze. Aelira screamed as her knees buckled. Rheon held her against his chest. Fight it, Aelira. Don't let him in. The frozen king tilted his head. She does not fight me. The cavern darkened. She fights herself. Ice erupted from beneath Aelira's feet, spikes curling upward like claws. Rheon dragged her away just in time, the spikes narrowly missing her legs. More erupted. Dozens. Hundreds. The cavern became a forest of knives. Rheon shielded Aelira with his body as they stumbled between them, the blades glistening with her reflection. Aelira's voice trembled. Rheon, make them stop, please, please. Rheon cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. You are stronger than this. You survived the first trial. But she pushed him away suddenly, violently. Her eyes had turned silver white. Rheon, don't come closer. Frost cracked across her arms like living veins. The air around her shimmered with lethal cold. She clutched her chest, writhing as the second heartbeat pounded like a war drum. Something's inside, clawing out. The frozen king finally moved again. He lowered his hand. The second trial begins. Rheon stepped between them, sword trembling in his grip. What is the second trial? She's already dying. The king's gaze passed through him as though he were vapor. Her body must withstand the birth of the winter sovereign. Or shatter. Aelira screamed. Frost erupted from her back, great jagged wings of ice. She collapsed onto her hands, breath tearing from her lungs. Rheon rushed to her, but the very air around her had become a wall of razor-cold wind. It sliced into his skin. Blood splattered across the ice. Yet he pressed forward. Aelira, I'm here, stay with me. Her voice broke. I can't hold it. It's tearing me apart. Her eyes rolled back as frost crawled across her cheeks. The king's voice fell like a verdict. Either she becomes winter, or winter consumes her. Rheon roared, lunging with his sword. The frozen king extended a single claw. Steel met frost. The sword shattered, exploding into shards, as Rheon was thrown across the cavern, smashing into the wall. Blood filled his mouth, but he forced himself up. He crawled, broken, toward Aelira. She lay on the ice, convulsing violently, wings of frozen agony spreading behind her. Rheon reached a trembling hand toward her. Aelira, please. She turned her head. Her eyes were half hers and half the abyss. Rheon, run? He shook his head. Never. Her lips parted, a whisper, fragile as dying snow. Then. I'm sorry. Her body arched. A surge of power burst outward, bright, cold, merciless. The cavern cracked from ceiling to floor. The wind howled like a grieving god. And Aelira screamed as the second trial tore her soul open.